I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about the future of learning and work and actually helping make expertise and skills count in the expertise economy. So, I wanted to start just a little bit by giving you some of my background. I actually have been in Silicon Valley my whole career and worked at some of the big tech companies there. About 2 years ago, I joined Degreed as the Chief Learning and Talent Officer. And one of the reasons I joined Degreed was I really feel like there's a huge paradigm shift going on in the world of learning and work. And we need to be thinking about it in a really proactive way. And I think there's never been a more exciting time to be in learning. So those of you who are in the learning and HR field, I'm sure you're feeling that excitement as well. Before I joined Degreed, I was actually the Chief Learning Officer of LinkedIn for 4 years and also led learning at Yahoo and Sun Microsystems. What I was taken by when I moved careers into the learning field about 15 years ago, was how antiquated learning felt to me. It just felt like we were really using some outdated models of helping people learn in the workforce, and I was a little surprised by that. So one of the things that I've done over the last 15 years is really try to see how we can use technology and how things are evolving with technology to really help people learn the way they really want to learn. And although I'm not going to dive into Degreed as a product today, I would say that Degreed is on the cutting edge of technology that's really helping people learn in the world of work today. And if you get a chance after this session, I'd encourage you to go to stall 704 and see what we're doing there. But what I wanted to start off today with you is a story about a company I used to work for. How many people here know Sun Microsystems? Okay, I worked at Sun Microsystems for over 20 years. I loved Sun Microsystems. It was a great place for me to build my career. I started in product development. I was in corporate strategy. I moved into learning. I had a team here in India and visited here many times while I was working at Sun. And for those of you who don't know about Sun, we were at one point considered one of the tech giants. We were going against, we were at the top of our game going against Microsoft and Hewlett Packard and IBM. We built computer workstations that ran some of the most successful companies in the world, banks and airlines, and the stock market. And we were also the inventors of Java. Most programmers today still use Java as a primary programming language, but something happened. Something happened to Sun Microsystems along the way, and it was devastating to the 40,000 employees that worked there. We never imagined that anything would happen to Sun Microsystems. It seemed like we were infallible and we'd always be at the top of our game, but that wasn't the case. And in fact, after the dot-com bust, we started struggling. Sun did not reinvent themselves. And as you can see, Microsoft has been reinventing itself over and over again. They're still one of the tech giants today. And unfortunately, towards the end of 2009, in 1 year, Sun went from being valued at over $65 billion to being valued at just a little over $7 billion. Oracle ended up buying Sun, and that was the end of the story. And the reason that I tell you this story is that this is what's happening in the world of work and in the economy now. And if you're not familiar with this, this is the campus in Silicon Valley that I went to work at every day. And does anybody know whose signage that is on the other side of the Sun logo? No, it's Facebook. Facebook bought Sun's campus, and they kept Sun's logo on the other side of their signage as a reminder of what can happen when companies become complacent, when they don't reinvent themselves, when they don't think about the future. And so that is the story of Sun, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. This is not just something that happened to Sun a while ago, eight years ago. This is something that's happening to companies all the time, every day. And there's a couple of reasons for that, and there are some amazing trends that are happening in the workforce today that are really causing us to think about how do we think about how we work, and how does learning at work impact the way we think about these trends in the workplace. So there's three major trends that are really impacting how we think about work and learning. First is automation. We know a lot of jobs are going for automation. It's not a doom and gloom story. I agree with Josh Burson, as he said earlier, there's more jobs than we have people to fill those. We don't have the people with the right skills to fill those jobs. Acceleration. There has never, ever been a time in our history where things are moving so fast and there's so much coming at us and so much change at such a rapid pace. It's hard for people to keep up with how fast things are accelerating. And of course, digitization. I mean, most companies are going through a digital transformation. And I think if I were to ask you, most of you would raise your hand, yes, we're going through a digital transformation. But then I would ask you, how much is your learning strategy part of that digital transformation strategy for your company? And that's where I think that we can really see the convergence of the trends happening in the workforce and how learning is really becoming a key differentiator and competitive advantage. So something to note, as I mentioned about the story with Sun, it's not just Sun. It's 50% of the S&P 500 companies will be replaced over the next 10 years. That's how fast things are changing. And 62% of executives believe they will need to retrain or replace at least a quarter of their workforce just by 2023. That's just a few years from now. So if you think about typical antiquated learning strategies where it's been a very myopic view of, oh, let's put out some compliance training and let's put out some events and some trainings here and there, this is no longer going to suffice. We actually need a skills strategy, a learning strategy that's going to help our companies move into the next wave of innovation. So a few years ago, well, actually not that long ago, Microsoft actually cut 4,000 jobs. Why did they do that? Well, they were moving into a new cloud software market, and what they realized almost too late was that they didn't have the people with the skills to help them move into that market. Now, if they would have thought about that strategy a few years earlier, they could have started upskilling, reskilling, cross-skilling their workforce in order to meet those demands, but they didn't. So they had to lay off 4,000 people, but then they hired 4,000 people back, people with the skills that they needed to move forward in their company. And I would bet that most of us don't want to be in that position where we have to lay off people in order to get people with the right skills. So there has to be, and the fact of the matter is we cannot rely on a hire-only strategy for the future. There just are not enough people out there with the skills that we need to move forward. So we're going to have to think about a dual-pronged approach to this problem, and that is helping people in your companies build the skills that they need and help them learn all the time. So the skills gap is a real problem. 92% of CEOs today don't think that they have employees with the skills that will help take them forward. That's a huge percentage of people. And so probably they're CEOs of the companies you work for, or if you're CEOs, you're feeling that way too. And as Josh mentioned in his presentation earlier too, it's not that, I mean, unemployment has been at an all-time low. We have a lot of jobs out there that are available, yet we don't have people with the skills to fill those jobs. And if I were to ask you, how many people out there have kids under the age of 5? Quite a few. I think it's amazing to think that those kids will be in jobs that that don't exist today, that we haven't even imagined of in the future. So if that's the case, how do we plan for the future? How do we plan for upskilling and reskilling our workforce when it's not even clear what skills they'll need? So since skills are hard to predict, I would argue that the skill that's in most demand today, and if you're hiring managers out there, that I do this too, I want to be hiring for learning agility. What do I mean by learning agility? people who are always learning new things all the time. I just read an article yesterday about the CEO of Macy's, and one of the things he attributes his career to is the fact that he's always learning and always building new skills. That's pretty inspiring from a CEO to talk about the success of his career is based on his learning agility and his ability to want to learn and build new skills continuously. And so I would say if you're hiring people, ask them what they learned last week or last year or last month and see what kind of response you get. Those that are continuously learning, are keeping up with the trends, who are learning new technologies on their own are going to be in the highest demand because they're going to know what skills are coming based on the trends that they're learning about every day. So I think about a little over 10 years ago, the iPhone was introduced. And today, I can't live without my phone. I can't imagine a world now without my iPhone. I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. Yet there's so many, in 10 years, so much has happened. If we take a retrospective look back, what we see is that we didn't imagine driverless jobs around driverless cars. Maybe there was an idea of a driverless car 10 years ago, but we've now, got jobs for driverless car engineers. And we also have jobs for people to work on drones so that they can deliver your shopping orders when you order things online. And we also have YouTube stars. I always think this is funny because I talk about YouTube content creators as part of the learning ecosystem, but there's actually jobs of people who are YouTube stars, which I think is still amazing. So those jobs, jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago, some of them feel like they've always been around. App developer, we've got Uber drivers, we've got big data analysts and data scientists, but these jobs are not very old. 10 years ago, they didn't exist. So given all the scenarios that I've put out there, I think one of the things we need to think about is how some of the smartest companies are preparing for skills in the expertise economy. Some people are thinking ahead and figuring out that what worked yesterday is not going to work today or moving forward. So I would argue, especially being a learning professional, is that we need to start thinking differently about learning, and we need to start letting go of outdated learning strategies that no longer fit the world of work that we live in every day. So, for example, a traditional organization, and I know it was true for me when I first joined, the learning community at Sun. We used to think we had to create all of our own content, and HR organizations still feel like pushing content and mandatory content, compliance content is like the foundation of what people do. But one-size-fits-all training doesn't really work anymore, and sending people to training classes for a day or multiple days and then hoping that they'll come back and maybe apply some of that knowledge and skills back on the job, we have data now that shows that doesn't work very well. People forget what they learned, or they don't get an opportunity to apply what they learned on the job, and so that money is wasted. So we really need to think about learning differently. We can't just rely on participation numbers to show the effectiveness of what we're doing at learning. And I would also argue that we need to think bigger in terms of learning and help. I think where it's heading now is that because things are moving so fast, we need to empower employees to do a lot more self-directed learning, and we need to personalize learning in a way that is relevant to every individual. And I know that some of these ideas have been out there for a while, but the fact is that we've never had the technology that's caught up. I know in earlier roles at earlier companies, we tried to make some of these things become a reality, but the technology wasn't there yet. Guess what? It's there now. And so if we think of learning in the flow of work and have people having content at their fingertips, if we think about all the data that we can get about what our learners are learning and what skills they're building, that data is at our fingertips. It's up to us to get that data, make some sense out of it, and get insights around it. And then the last part is really about a culture of learning and about a culture of realizing that when you go to school and you get a 4-year degree, or you go back to school and get your master's, that education no longer sustains you for the entirety of your careers anymore. That even if you are the expert in data science today, you need to keep learning to see what's going on next week, next month, next year. You need to be continuously learning. And this culture that says we really want people who want to learn everything rather than feel like they know everything already. So this know-it-all culture versus a learn-it-all culture, I think, is really a powerful idea. So some of the research that we've done at Degreed is actually saying that 79% of learning comes from sources outside of your company. So that means if you're designing and developing learning, your employees are more often than not either not using it or they're using it a bit, but more often than not they're looking at the resources that are outside of your company. These are resources like Coursera and Udemy and TED Talks and YouTube videos. This is the way people really learn. And so if that's the way people really learn, and these are the types of content people are actually accessing, I would want to know why aren't we doing this more? Why aren't we offering that kind more? There's a couple of other CEOs who have been taking a tact on how they should encourage their employees to be learning every day. CEO of AT&T talks about actually told his employees bluntly, if you're not learning at least 5 to 10 hours a week, you're actually going to become obsolete. You know, that technology is going to take over. So that's a little harsh maybe, but I think it brings the point home. Unilever is actually instead putting together a learning strategy that's part of their larger business strategy that's saying, you know, we want to help upskill and reskill our 160,000 employee base across the globe because we want you to learn and grow with us. And then we've got CFOs who are now saying, look, if we have data about what skills our people are building and what they're learning, this is incredibly powerful for the whole strategy moving forward. And Booz Allen Hamilton realizes that they have to upskill a quarter of their workforce and are actually putting programs in place to have people get upskilled and reskilled with data science through a variety of assets. And so Satya Nadella also agrees. He's the one who said, I want a learn-it-all culture, not a know-it-all culture. And he's saying how important it is to have that kind of culture. I'm rushing through a little bit because I think my time is short. So skills are currency in the expertise economy. Let's talk about what that means. CEOs want to know, do I have the skills in my company in order for it to succeed? That's a pretty big question. It's pretty broad. They're not asking, do I have a learning program on negotiation skills? They're asking, do we have the skills we need to succeed? Business leaders want to know the same thing. Do we have skills in my team, in my organization that are going to help us succeed as a business? And then, of course, employees are afraid too that they don't have the skills that they need to move forward. So they're asking those questions as well. So let's talk about where we're headed. We took a retrospective look about what was happening about 10 years ago. Let's look ahead now. And PwC actually just released this report on the workforce of the future, imagining what will work look like in 12 years. It's not very far away, yet the scenarios are amazing. I would encourage you all to download this report and take a look. But one of the stats here talks about the fact that 73% of those surveyed said that they don't think that machines will ever take over some things that humans can do. But if I take you through a brief journey of what's been happening around artificial intelligence and machine learning, we know that in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue machine actually beat the world chess champion in the game of chess. And that in 2011, IBM's Watson beat humans in Jeopardy. In both of these cases, it was humans teaching machines how to play these games so that they could beat humans. But now we've gone beyond that, where now Google's DeepMind artificial intelligence wing has created a machine called AlphaGo. And it has not only beat Lee Sedol, who's the world champion in the game of Go, AlphaGo is actually now teaching itself how to play the game, and it's teaching humans how to better play the game of Go. So we're reaching new horizons with artificial intelligence. And I think that the thing is that as learning professionals, as HR professionals, what we need to realize is that we're going to have to we're going to have to deal with technology and machines, and it's not a bad thing. It can be a really great thing. But what we do need to think about is how we work together in this world where this is going to be the norm moving forward. So how do we work together, humans and machines? And it can be a really great, it doesn't mean we're all going to lose our jobs. It means we're going to have different types of jobs. We're going to have to think about that differently. So summary, I think what's really important is think about upskilling and reskilling the workforce. Think about learning in a higher way so that you can be part of a business strategy, not part of just designing and developing programs. Also, understand, ask yourself, do you know the skills that the people in your group have and what they need, or in your company? That's a really important question because most of the time the answer is no. And then the future is humans plus machines. Let's get ready.